You to an annual election event, that being the political forum sponsored by the Salem Leader, Salem Publishing Company, and Farm Bureau of your candidates both on a national and county basis. My name is Mark Clark, and I will be your only moderator tonight. Usually I'm joined with or by Mr. Andrew Wright, but he has other engagements tonight, keeping him from joining us, so you're stuck with me by myself tonight. So, well, let us get started. In our first candidates, we'll start with the United States Representative candidates. So if Mr. Bill Bailey would please join me, and Mr. Mike Frey, please join us. Gentlemen, just have a seat here at the tables. Please give them a round of applause. Sorry? Can I explain? Yes, maybe I can. You tell me. It should be on.
Okay, I think we can do that. I probably should be on the right side, and you should probably be on the left, though. Yeah, we are. Oh, okay to them. You're right.
Remember, it is a live mic when you come up, so anything you say may be heard. The process we'll do tonight is we will, because of the number of candidates we have, we will start off with questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer a question, and then there will be 30 seconds for rebuttal by the other candidates, and then 60 seconds or 30 seconds back from the original candidate to rebut that, if I saw the agenda correctly. So that will be the process we'll follow. Ms. Nancy Grossman will be our timekeeper, and she will be showing cards at 15 seconds and at stop. And the peer pressure will be upon candidates to stop when the red signs comes up to say stop. That being our rules, gentlemen. First, let me again introduce Mr. Bill Bailey from Seymour, Indiana on the Democrat ticket, and Mr. Mike Frey from Greenwood, Indiana on the Libertarian ticket. And Mr. Frey, we will start with you, sir.
Okay, before we get started, I would like to say one thing.
Wait, stop. There are no opening statements.
I just wanted to tell people that I've been with this man, traveled 4 different venues, and I just wanted to tell you, Bill and I are going to disagree on a lot of things, but I'll tell you what, he's a class gentleman, and I've come to admire him, and he's really been real nice to discuss the issues with. I wish the other person was here. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. No more of that.
Okay. The agreement was $5, but that's
no more dealing. All right. Mr. Frey.
Yes, sir.
Since you're from Greenwood and Mr. Bailey is from Seymour, coming down more towards the district is such a large district, please tell us your qualifications and what particular skills you have that will make you an effective Congress representative for our district.
40 years in the private sector, working for a major consumer products company as a sales and marketing graduate, a native Hoosier, a graduate from the Indiana School of Business. Someone who for the last 40 years has supported this expanding government by paying more than my fair share of taxes, like I think most of you seen. I've managed a large organization of 170 people that accounted for $370 million. $100 million of that which was profit for my corporation. I've traveled around the country. I think that really Congress and the Founding Fathers was meant for Congress to be held, positions held by basically private citizens. They weren't supposed to be professional politicians. Look what professional politicians have got us into. $20 trillion in debt. Conflicts overseas that we don't seem to be able to resolve. Let's face it, we're a mess, and we're a mess because we basically have trusted our government to professional politicians instead of the common man, instead of citizens, and that's what I am, a citizen.
How to summarize 44 years in 30 seconds. Former public school teacher and high school coach. Served on the Seymour City Council for 4 years, mayor of Seymour for 8, Indiana General Assembly for 10. Have taken second mortgages twice to build 2 businesses and sold them profitably. Last 14 years I've been president of the Seymour Chamber of Commerce, doing small business development.
Mr. Bailey. We'll start with you. Along those lines, what qualities do you believe you have that can impress upon Congress to change the processes that Congress uses that we have seen result in the deadlock or gridlock, as it's sometimes called, between particularly the two major parties within Congress?
I think Tyler Grandpa, at this station in my life, this is not going to be a career. And so the ability to go to Washington and do what's right for the people in the 9th District. When I was mayor of Seymour, the sewer that was stopped up was not a Republican sewer or a Democrat sewer. It's just a stopped up sewer. Because there's no Washington money in my campaign, nor is there any state Democrat money in my campaign, my allegiance and responsibilities to the people of the 9th District. So given my age and the fact that this isn't going to be a career, I can politely or not so politely say no to any ridiculous idea that's just political partisanship, or yes to any good idea that promotes the people of the 9th District and the middle class and getting jobs back into the 9th District.
Well, when I'm elected, I'll be one of the few libertarians in Congress. The fact of the matter is, I won't caucus with John Boehner and the Republicans. I won't caucus with Nancy Pelosi or the Democrats. I'll caucus with the folks of the 9th District of Indiana. In my career, believe me, there were many discussions involving millions of dollars for corporations where there were disputes between marketing and sales, and different people had different perspectives. I know how to resolve issues. Again, I won't be beholden to lobbyists. I won't be beholden to major contributions to my campaign. I won't be beholden to a political party. The average Democrat votes 88% of the time along party lines. The average Republican in Congress votes 95% along party lines. I'm going to vote with the folks of the 9th District probably about 100% of the time.
I suppose the only rebuttal I would have to that would be that I'm glad I'm not an average Democrat. Probably one of the most conservative Democrats one will ever meet. Grew up in West Kentucky, and I'm very comfortable with that.
Mr. Bailey, we'll come back to you for this question. Do you believe at this point that the United States is taking the right action by limiting its battle against terrorists, particularly ISIS, the group called ISIS, or nomenclature ISIS in the Middle East, and other terroristic groups such as that?
Well, in fairness to Mike, it's his turn, so I will eliminate him in 30 seconds of response.
Now, I meant Mr. Frey, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we do. I think without a doubt, I'm a little tired of it always being American blood shed. I think the fact of the matter is we have a situation in the Middle East. I think we have the Turks, we have Saudi Arabia, we have allies. I think it's really their responsibility. And I don't think the United States should put foot soldiers. That being said, if the decision is made down the line, I think one of the major mistakes we have made, and again, it has to be with Congress's approval. That's one of the things, the War Act ensures that Congress and the President both agree. If we do make the determination that we are going to go into conflict, and it's the last thing I want to do, again, I think the folks in the Middle East should handle that. I want us to do it the right way. In my lifetime, we've made some mistakes by going into conflict where we're not prepared to do what it is to win. And if you go into conflict, you're going to war. There are no rules in war. You win it. But again, I think the way to address this is let the Turks, the Saudi Arabias, and those folks handle it. Thanks.
I agree with Mike. In the Middle East, we don't have any best friends forever, with the exception of Israel. The very idea that it's too many times American soldiers, men and women that are bleeding and losing body parts and being killed. It's one thing to be a leader in the world and to have allies, but those allies need to be standing beside you, not behind you. The Congress needs to do more to have input on when we do put boots on the ground. We have other resources. We have intelligence, we have economic sanctions. We don't always have to draw a gun first and then start talking. ISIS is evil. ISIS needs to be eliminated. But I don't think it's our principal responsibility to be the one to eliminate ISIS. I think there are others in that region that can do so, and we can be there to assist them. We don't have to be figuring out what's in their best interest. We just do up to our best interests.
Well, again, I think Bill and I are pretty much in agreement on this one. Again, the one thing we both want to do, obviously, get American troops involved as the last resort. I think we've been too often too quick to pull the trigger and get troops involved, and that hasn't always worked out well for us.
Mr. Bailey, being a first-time congressman to the U.S. House of Representatives, what will be your two most important agenda items to accomplish for the 9th District?
Job creation is first. Understanding that the middle class is the true economic energy of this country. And the last 4 years, what we've seen is the rich have gotten richer, the poor have gotten poorer, and the middle class had to get second jobs. That has to be reversed, and so the economy and jobs is going to be first and foremost every day. Secondly is going to be the budget reduction, the budget deficit reduction. My children and grandchildren cannot inherit that and sustain it. So that takes some really tough decisions. Economics are going to be the overarching theme, and it's going to have two parts, job creation and the budget deficit reduction.
Here, once again, we agree on the priorities. We might disagree on how we achieve them, but job creation is the most important thing. We talk about the disparity in income, and the fact of the matter is, this current economy, this current recovery is the slowest recovery in American history. We need to create jobs. I think the way to do that is we have overtaxed and overregulated the private sector, and the government continues to take more and more. I find it very interesting why the average income of the average American has gone down 5% during this quote-unquote recovery. Washington, D.C. has increased on average income. In fact, 3 of the 4 richest counties in the country are in the Washington, D.C. area. The second thing we need to do is reduce the size of the federal deficit and debt. And we do that by cutting spending. I work for a corporation where we cut costs 15% 1 year. Believe me, you can do it. It takes discipline, and it goes line by line, department by department, but we can cut federal spending, we can change the tax code, and we can get more money back to consumers.
The other thing that I would do is work on education. The next generation has to be the entrepreneurs and the leadership of our country. And so making it easier for people to go to college or to get workforce training in county learning centers. The most important asset to an employer is a good employee, and a good employee is one who has a good education and workforce training. So it would be the budget and workforce training or education.
Along those same lines, I think, Mr. Bailey, it's your time to go first. What would be your major changes that you would advocate in terms of changing the Internal Revenue Code and or the IRS?
If the tax code were printed out, it's some, I think it's, I forget, 80,000 pages? 85,000 pages. We've spent enough time and energy helping the upper 1% and the CEOs of major Wall Street corporations. It's time to address the needs of the middle income of America. Single parents, people working 2 jobs, college students working for minimum wage, trying to get through school and coming out with a debt of $30,000, $40,000. The first thing that I would try to do is find people who agree with me and see if you can't build a coalition to address the inequity between the attention we've paid to Wall Street corporations and the poor response we've given to the average working men and women of the 9th District.
It's one of my big issues. We've got to have tax reform. We spend $11 to $12 billion a year on the IRS. Like we talked about, 85,000 pages. I favor either a flat or a fair tax, a 1-page tax document that anyone can fill out. How many of you really know how to fill out your taxes? I do my own taxes. Believe me, it takes me 3 to 4 hours, and I'm pretty good with math. We need to simplify the system. However, the one difference we do have is we need to create opportunities for business to expand. So we need to take a look at the corporate taxes. You know, everyone talks about how corporations don't pay enough taxes, and I fundamentally agree. Some of them don't because of all the deductions. You simplify the system, and it will make a fair playing field for all corporations too. But you know what? If you took the money of the Fortune 500 profits for the year, it would only fund the government through the end of February. We've got an oversized government. The big issue we really do is we have to cut government spending. We have to get this out of control government.
Well, we've gotten the government that we deserve because we don't go vote. More people voted, we'd have more responsive government in Congress. Why have the 1% done well? Because we have 130,000 people funding elections, and they're spending the money of the other 300 million of us that we earn. Now, who's writing the tax laws? The lawyers and the accountants and the CPAs who work for the 130,000 people. That's got to be turned around. If it doesn't, we're going to have such an economic caste system in this country. If you've ever seen the musical Les Miserables, the miserables are going to just rise up and revolt.
Mr. Frey, tell us, please, your position on the Affordable Care Act and whether you would continue to, or whether you would support it and in its current form, and what items you would work towards its reform or repeal.
I can't believe that we're ready to turn 16% of the American economy over to the federal government. Let me see, what has the federal government done well? Well, in 1965, it introduced a war on poverty. We spent trillions of dollars on that. The poverty rate last year was very close to what it was established in 1965. Perhaps we should have declared peace on poverty. Hasn't really run the post office very efficiently. It's got involved in education, where the federal government now is telling the folks in Salem how to run their schools and putting restrictions and so on with regulations on the school system for you to get the tax money from Washington. You send it up there, they take their 30% and send it back to you. The federal government is not very efficient at doing anything, in my opinion, and the last thing we want to do. So I'm in favor of repealing it. I do think we have to open up competition across state lines. We have to have tort reform. The one issue that needs to be addressed is pre-existing conditions, and I'm sure we can work within the legislature to work out a way to solve that.
I'm a supporter of the idea of the Affordable Care Act, and the reason is, in 1984, when I was elected mayor of Seymour, during the 90-day waiting period to get on the city's health insurance, I was diagnosed with malignant cancer. As a result of that, when the 90 days was over, I couldn't get health insurance coverage, and because I couldn't get coverage, my family had no coverage. No parent should ever have to hope that the fever breaks in 48 hours, because if it doesn't, your next choice is the most expensive health care in the world, an emergency room. Now, my daughter's 37. Susan has a pre-existing condition. If it weren't for the Affordable Care Act, Susan would never have the opportunity. Now, the Affordable Care Act was rolled out abysmally, and it has lots of areas that need to be improved. But the idea of scrapping it is not an idea that I ascribe to. I'm old enough to remember the passage of Medicare and Medicaid, and it took 6 years after the passage of that to continue improving it to where we have what we have today. I would support the Affordable Care Act, but with significant changes to it.
Again, we're talking about government programs that basically all end up spending more money than they're supposed to. And the fact of the matter is, folks, we have $20 trillion debt. We've got two major parties. One of them is going to drive us over the cliff, the financial cliff, in a Mercedes. The other is going to do it in a moped. But they're both going to do it. And to do this with the Affordable Care Act, adding additional burden is not something that I think is the right thing to do.
We are going to try to keep the groups to about 15 minutes, and I didn't pay attention to the clock over there, so we've got a little longer with you two gentlemen, so we'll wrap this up. Will you both be staying throughout the duration?
Yes, I will. I'm sure.
Not trying to put you on the spot. This will be the only forum these gentlemen have been invited to attend. There are two others within the county. So if you do have additional questions for them, you may want to hang around until the end of the program tonight and discuss those with them.
Again, I'm going to add something else, so please, I
No,
apologize.
not going to let you do it. Not going to let you do
All I'm
it.
going to say is I had to get approval from my wife. She saw me check, so I want everyone to understand I know who the boss is. You know?
Go ahead and give us your 60-second closing statement, gentlemen. Whoever wants to go first.
60-second closing. Congress has a 14% approval rating. Congress is made up of its individual members. Therefore, Congressman Todd Young is the individual member who has contributed to the 14% approval rating. If we were teachers in high school and we gave a quiz of 100 questions and the student only got 14 right, what grade did they get? They get an F. If we owned a business and we had 100 deliveries to make and they had 2 years to make the deliveries, and at the end of 2 years they only made 14 of them, what would you do with that employee? I think the solution is pretty simple. We have to see some massive turnover in the United States Congress. I think I bring the small town background of knowing how to run a community. I bring the background of having owned and run 2 small businesses that had employees. And I bring the experience of the legislature, the Indiana State Legislature, of knowing how to get things done even when we were split 50-50. At this age in my career, this won't be a career. But I'm doing this for my children and my grandchildren. And a couple of 2 terms in this, and I have a bucket list of things I want to get finished.
Some of you may have already voted or will soon. Some of you will wait till November. You're going to basically have 3 choices. If you pick the incumbent or Mr. Bailey, the election's going to end. One of them will go to Washington. One will caucus with John Boehner and the Republicans. The other will caucus with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. There'll be one at 435. The federal deficit will hit $20 trillion, and nothing's going to be any different. If you elect the private citizen, the libertarian, the non-professional, the fact of the matter is the voice in the 9th District will be heard around this country. It will be on the nightly news. A libertarian, a small government candidate who wants the federal deficit reduced, who wants government out of people's economic and personal life is one. We will be all over the news because it will be news because we beat an incumbent Republican in a gerrymandered district and beat the other party. The fact of the matter is, let's really do send a message to Washington.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, Can we please have the